evening, it's my privilege to introduce you to our viewing audience, Sister Irene Walker. Mm-hmm. And I know that I had met you at Springbank when we were both on a Holy Week retreat. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. You came with Sister
Rosemary Ferguson.
Rosemary, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And you were with Sister Rosaire.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And I think you were the first Edmund Dominicans that I had met.
Could be.
I think so. And then I visited Seattle, the Seattle Sisters, Virginia Pearson and Sharon Park, and they showed me around. And finally, I saw your beautiful garden. And row upon row of award-winning dahlias. How did you ever get started in planting that beauty on our earth?
Well, first of all, I went to the Washington State Fair, and they had a floral hall, and in that floral hall there were rows and rows and rows of dahlias, which I had not seen before. I said, "What are those?" And that was it. I was hooked that very moment. And so anywhere I go, I have those with me. All the tubers, they're tucked in the suitcases and here and there. And
well, thank you for bringing them to Adrian. You've brightened our life. You have a very interesting Dominican life.
I do.
Yes. But first of all, where did your life begin? Out west?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 1936 in Seattle, Washington. And I was named Janet Murray Walker. And it was after a woman that my mother knew in New York. She was in New York, and this lady was a doctor, a woman doctor who went around in her little Model T Ford to all her patients, rain, shine, big snow drifts, night or day, whenever they were needed. So she was very impressed with her and gave me her name, Janet Murray, and so added Walker, of course.
Well, what an honor to Janet, and for you, too. Was your mother born in New York?
Yes, she's from Schenectady, New York, upstate New York.
Well, how did Seattle, Washington, and Schenectady get together?
Now we have to go to my father,
Mm-hmm.
who was a Washingtonian, and the city and the state of many hills and many mountains and all kinds of different formation than in the east here. And so as he was an electrical engineer, and so he had a lot of meetings in Schenectady, which is the big GE foundation. And the Russell Sage College, which my mother was attending, they would have dances on the weekend for the young engineers. And so the meeting took place, and then so my father took her as his wife.
So there was electricity from the beginning.
Yes, there was. And he was the inventor of the electric train cars, and that which meant, of course, they had to string wires and stuff, pole after pole, throughout the country to make them move without putting all the strain on an engine.
And that was for the Northern Railroad?
Yes.
Is that what they...
Great Northern.
The Great Northern. So he was responsible. It's like replacing the coal cars.
Right. Well,
to
actually,
electric.
I believe they had the engine with the steam, but the train cars were with
Became
the electric
electric.
in it, so it gave it more power to pull them along the line.
Is that from whom your father, you received the genes for artistry?
Could be.
Yes.
Because he was always designing, and had his board and did designs.
Did you, you lived in the Seattle area, was there ever any connection with Boeing?
Oh, yeah. After the GE Electric, then on weekends, he would take us out to the big Boeing plant and all the big planes. And, you know, everybody kind of went to all of these places on Sunday to show things. Because, you know, actually Sunday was a sacred day, which it isn't now.
Yeah,
But
no one worked.
right.
Yeah.
And so you had time to do fun things and go around and see things. And of course, you know, those planes were huge, and I'm sure he had something to do with them. That time we, you know, didn't know.
Irene, I think you might be the only one in the Adrian Dominican congregation now that has had the experience of living in 2 other Dominican mother houses.
Yes, I have.
Your life began in which one?
In the Tacoma Dominicans. Yes, I went to the Sisters of the Holy Names for 1 year and for high school, and it was fine. But then I did meet some of the sisters in the white habits, and I was kind of taken by them, and so I got to know some of the sisters. And so then I changed to go to Aquinas Academy, which was in Tacoma, Washington. It was a lovely old, they had a school and also a boarding school for younger children.
Were you a commuter or a resident?
A resident of Tacoma at that time.
No, I mean of the academy.
Oh, no.
No.
Yeah, well, I went to the high school there and met the sisters, and had a great time.
Did you enter right after high school?
Yes, I did, much to the chagrin of my mother. But
Really? Why?
well, she was a Catholic in the family. My father wasn't Catholic at the time until later he converted. And, well, I guess she had other plans for me.
Married and
Maybe.
more grandchildren for her. Did you have any other siblings?
Yes, I had a brother who was 2 years older than I. I was born on October 30th, and my sister had been born 11 years earlier on October 30th also. So that was kind of a surprise, I'm sure, to her, as well as to the rest of the family. So
You saw her grow during her teenage years.
That's right. That's right.
It must have been the time of World War II.
Yes. 36. Yeah, sure. It would be 46. World War II. And she would take me to some of her things, even the college things, and she belonged to a sorority, and they were supposed to bring their younger sisters, and of course I was like this, a toddler, and so my mother would dress me in these pinafores. And
you were
so
cute.
she would drag me around to whenever there was an event for little sisters from her sorority. So that introduced me to the world outside, of course.
Did she frequent the canteen at the time of the of soldiers coming to town?
Yes, we baked cookies. I remember doing that. I got to put the frosting on top, and had different colors until it finally got to the end, and we had gray frosting on the.
Gray?
Pardon?
Gray? Did you say?
Well, you know, when you mix colors,
Oh,
you get gray. So anyway, they ate them, I'm sure, whether it was gray or pink or green or whatever. And so
did she marry a soldier?
no, she did not. She was taking arts. She was also an artist, and taking the arts and journalism was her major. And so evidently when you graduate, you have a list of where they need journalists, and so she found one in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. And so she went there and had the job in journalism. And she, well, let's see.
Did she find someone, a Southern gentleman, let's
Yes,
say?
she did. Yes,
Oh,
she did.
mhm.
A Southern gentleman who was well endowed in an estate. Or it was a very Southern estate. He had the most delightful mother, very Southern. Everything was perfect, and so on and so on. And of course, I didn't meet them until I was in the habit when I first met the family down in Georgia.
How long were you a member of the Tacoma Dominicans?
Well, gee, I can't remember the years, but it was at least maybe 20, something like that.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And
But there were Edmonds around the area, correct?
well, this is how I came to know the Edmonds. Our college was Fort Wright College, which had their domain in eastern Washington, Spokane, Washington, and the Holy Names had the college there. And so there were sisters from around the state of Washington, of course, and other places that came to the college. And so we met, and with all the sisters, and they were in the classes with us, and we went to see, now I'm lost.
School.
You're going to edit this out, of course.
Yeah, oh, of course. Yes. Without a doubt. Is that when you met Sister Rosaire?
Yes, and other Dominicans and other holy names and Benedictines and so on. And so when we went back to our hometowns, the sister in charge, the Holy Name sister, says, you know, you sisters have to kind of stick together. I mean, you know, get together and be doing things. So we did. We'd all get together at certain times, and then some would drop off, and so it kind of got down to where Sister Rosaire and I, both being Dominicans, would be able to go to a lot of the lectures and group meetings of all the Dominicans.
Did you live together at some point while you were going to school?
Well, yeah, we were in the Fort Wright College was a big Army fort, a station, and that's why it was called Fort Wright. And so evidently the grounds had been given to them by the Army when they moved on, and it was just a huge place. They had the officers' quarters and also the big dorms where we stayed. And so we really had a interest in.
Yes. What about your experience as manager or managers of an apartment, a top floor apartment?
Well, there we met a lot of people. However, we knew one person in Seattle, and she got to know Sister Rosaire was teaching at Holy Rosary, and that was one of our schools, the Tacoma schools, because we started interchanging with the sisters from other places in schools when we didn't have enough
of our own. Yeah.
And so the lady, her Sister Rosaire was teaching her kids. And she said, you know, we have a summer place in Twin Lakes, and that's in the state of Idaho. It's
Right on the border.
yes, and so we were there, and we met one of her friends, who was also had a cabin on the lakes, and she got interested in us and finding out what sisters are and what they do and so on. So then she said that she and her family wanted to go on a vacation, and could we possibly take care of the home in Spokane while they were on vacation. And they had a large home, and then they had a kind of a farm part of it, and they had peacocks. And the peacocks were huge things, and they'd roost on the roof at night, and then they'd fall asleep, and they'd roll off, and big crash, and
What a sight.
wake everybody up, and so on. But her point about the peacocks was that they had a brood of about 12 little chicks, and she said, now watch out for the chicks, because the big male chick will stomp on them. So anyway, we tried, yes, but when they came back, there weren't quite 12, but there were still a few survivors. Anyway.
Did they own the apartment then that you lived in when you went to school?
Yes. So in the city, this lady was just the most grand of business women that you ever met. They had an apartment building that had stores below, and the apartments that were just a one room, like those ones where people are doing something all day and they're not interested in entertaining, or
Like efficiencies?
yes, an efficiency apartment. And so they
So what was your obligation of
well,
once you lived there free of charge
yes, we were in charge. I tell
while
you,
you went to school?
yeah, we had the one apartment that was not efficiency, that had a couple of bedrooms, and so that's what you got if you were the manager of the apartments. So all 12 of them, or 11, not counting us, they had the most interesting lives that you could ever believe. So we learned a whole lot about life. And so if anything went wrong in the apartment, of course, we had to learn to fix it. And so we had friends down in the
Hardware store.
yeah, hardware stores, and got all the things we needed. And so we learned how to fix this and fix that. And
Did you paint the walls in the
oh yes,
apartment?
we changed some, and we didn't use any of the pastels and so on. We used a few other different colors, and people seemed to like it for as long as they were there. But they did have their problems now and again, and so I let Sister Rosaire take care of all those kind of problems.
She was the counselor.
Yeah, she's the one with the heart, and I've got a
You're the doer.
yeah. Well, you know.
Well, it's wonderful that you both share so many things in common.
Yeah.
Your love of art,
Yeah.
particularly.
Yeah.
Then, was the transfer from Tacoma to Edmonds difficult for you?
Well, no, we still managed otherwise. We got the benefits of both communities, and so I forget what finally, maybe because of the travel and so on, that we decided, that maybe this was a better fit for our program.
Mhm.
Did all the arts and things. That one time we went to the lake for a week. It rained all week, but we had brought our art supplies with us, so we painted for the whole week. Didn't get in that water once.
Is that where you saw the Trident submarines?
No, not in Idaho. We were. Well, that came somewhat later, when the Tridents. We became the Bangor, Washington, the counterpart of Bangor, Maine, which was the East Coast. So that whole East Coast was patrolled by the Tridents, and then now the West Coast had the Tridents coming in to work that. Prior to that, all communities and Bishop Hunthausen, there was a big demonstration, and it was out at the beach, and the Buddhists came, and all kinds of
Against the
yes,
the Trident.
Hunthausen was really death against having these machines of war, and they're very ominous looking.
Would
So-
they be as the length of this rose room here?
Probably
Maybe
about
more.
3 times.
Oh my golly!
They really were.
Mm.
I mean, just these black, ominous looking things. And we were living at that time right above the beach, and the place where they came to practice. So the main place where they kept the ships was around the corner, and nobody got in there. You didn't get in unless you had special cards on the base, and so that was all protected, and so we never saw them in their hangars or whatever.
Yeah.
They keep them
Wherever
until they come out. But every morning they came out, and then they went around the corner, and we don't quite know what they did there. And I know they had a boat that came very early in the morning before they came out and picked up I didn't know whether shell casings or what, because the nuclear, I don't know if they use a shell to get them out of there. But anyway, this boat had to pick up the whatever, and it was very noisy. It was just this rattly old boat at 6:30 in the morning, and the Bangor base was very, very careful how they treated the people in this area, because the fishermen had their nets out and so on, and so if anything went wrong, they very carefully covered any damages and so on. So I think that they put their nets out a little farther and a little farther.
To get some compensation.
Yeah, that we thought.
Well, after you left your apartment ministry and school, you and Rosaire were part of an amalgamation of high schools, correct? The
Oh, yeah.
Jesuits and the
Yes.
Tacomas.
Yeah.
Yes. Was
Yeah.
that in Tacoma?
That was in Tacoma.
And tell me how you brought that school to be a _ nationwide
Well,
school.
it was really a great part of our life. We, Aquinas and the Catholic girls' schools were separate, and then it got harder and harder for both the girls and the boys' school to finance. So it was decided that the sisters would leave their building, and they would go to Bellarmine, because they did have some extra rooms and so on. So
Bellarmine was the Jesuit school.
Jesuit school, yes, and no women, but as I said, the boys and the girls had to change some of their habits, as not running through the hall in their shower towels for the boys, and the girls couldn't flip up their skirts and pull down their blouses. So it became a little more civilized at a school. But anyway, when we looked at that, they said, well, what do you want now? Because we were going to teach all the arts. There was no art at the boys' school, because, they would just consider that below them and this and that. They had their sports, and they had their this and their intellectual studies and so on. So anyway, so they said, well, what do you need for a photography lab? I said, well, I need sinks, and I need shelves, and I need a dark room. And so let's see, what did they give me first? Oh, how wide would, about 3 feet shelves, and sinks. And so he showed me this closet. I mean, I needed it dark, of course, but no windows.
No.
So I said, well, I mean, there's standing room with it toward the shelf, and that's it. So, all right. So this vice principal was evidently he had a Jesuit education, but he was not a Jesuit. So he said, "Well, okay. Well, there's a biology room that they're not using, so that had the shelves and it had the sinks and shelves, and of course big windows. So then he said, well, we can put up plastic. Well, so they put this plastic up, black plastic. So it was blowing all over and all that. I said, no, this isn't going to do. So when we first came, even before that, we went to work on a big art room for many of the arts that would take place without all the accoutrements that the other rooms would take. And we came in, and there was little Brother Wood. Now, Brother Wood was a Jesuit brother who was in charge of maintenance, everything. And so he just looked at us like, well, I don't know. Well, we'll help you clean the room and fix things. So the minute we got there, we got out our tools and we got down on our knees and we unscrewed all the plates, the electrical plates, because you don't paint a room and paint around these electrical plates, because we learned all these things, in the apartment. Well, even at home, we kind of took care of things.
Well, did the boys, Jesuit boys there, see you doing this?
Well, anyway, Brother Wood was with us at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when he saw us do that, he couldn't believe it, that we knew anything about anything, because women, of course, don't, and especially to the Jesuits. The Jesuits were there, and the Mothers Club took care of anything they needed for that, whatever, and so on. So after we did all that and got the paint rollers out and did whatever we had to do, we became good friends with Brother Wood. There wasn't anything he wouldn't do for us. What he did was give us half of his whole workstation down below,
Mm-hmm.
and built a dark room for us, and put in the sinks and had the dark room, all the lights. And
You must have done some gardening, too, to beautify that school.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes, we did.
Flower
We did.
after flower.
Every parish where we were, sometimes the churches, the last thing they would do, or the school. So we got out the flowers, and the kids planted and did all kinds of things with us. And so...
Before we close, Irene, I really would be interested in what your emotions were when you left Seattle area and the Edmonds and took on the name Adrian
Yes.
Dominicans.
Yes.
How was that for you?
We knew that we were retired at the time, and that why look for we had to move. Why did we have to move? Something was evidently...
Wasn't the mother house being sold?
Oh,
And you had a
yes.
place right next to it.
Yeah, at Rosary Heights, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, well, why go and try to establish another whole place for us and do that? And there was room at Regina. We contacted, and all that room was taken. So where am I now? I'm leaving Edmonds.
Mm-hmm.
So we packed up bag and baggage to come for retreat here, instead of, as we say, getting another one and then having to move in a few years anyway.
Yeah.
And it was fine that Adrian's accepted us, and
Of course.
except when we came in with the big moving van. How we ever got everything in that moving van, I don't know, but it was only one moving van,
But you were artists.
Yes, that's right. So we had this kind of art and that kind of stuff, and this equipment and so on, and of course our household equipment, and so here we were, and then we just flew under the radar, so we didn't make too much of a...
Well, from my vantage point, you both just melded so beautifully and gracefully into this Adrian cornfield culture
Thank you. And the flat land.
in the flat
You have to
land.
remember,
Right.
Washington was full of hills.
You left the
cobblestone
hills
roads and all this kind of thing,
Yeah.
and you're hoping you could make it up the hill, and we didn't have one leg shorter than the other because we were always on a slant.
1 foot shorter than the other.
I do. I have one.
Really?
Yeah.
From your hill.
I guess so.
Well, I thank you for your graciousness today, and above all for bringing the beauty of your heart and your gifts to this campus. It is a blessing, and we love those dahlias when they appear in
Oh,
our lobby.
thank you.
So thank you.
Well, I hope I have another couple of years at putting them in, taking them out.
Well, that's a big decision to make when you're turning 80 soon.
Yeah,
Yes.
not 82.
No, 80 soon.
Oh, I thought you said 82.
Amen. Thank you so much, Irene.
Well, thank you for